Hi, welcome to the Divine Insight Show. Thank you so much for joining us wherever and whenever you're doing so. Like I always say, it's no accident that you're here. Something brought you here today for this particular message or this information, and we are so excited to share it with you. And I'm really honored and privileged and excited to talk with Rebecca Dawson here with me today, who's written The Agreement. She is an international channeler, speaker, and author based out of Perth, Australia, and she's been in practice for more than 25 years. She's facilitated over 2,000 private consultations, and her focus in the last 10 years has been on the research and understanding of the shifts that are occurring in Earth and humanity. An ability to acutely observe the human energy field has led to an interest in the mapping, and documenting of the changes occurring in the human energy field and understanding how these changes impact upon human capacity, functionality, and experience of life. Many hours of clinical observation and hundreds of accompanying channeled documents are revealing the synchronicity and pattern of change that is sweeping across humanity and the planet itself. Rebecca is now devoted to bringing this information into accessibility so that humanity can start to have a conscious understanding of what is happening, why it's happening, and what can be created from this emerging capacity. With the assistance of her team of masters, Rebecca facilitates workshops and events around the world that allow more understanding to occur and more information to emerge. Her new book, The Agreement, has been written to help us ease into that place of highly elevated conscious awareness and prepare us to undertake this shift. It is a roadmap for embracing life from this new level of cosmic mind. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be with you.
You're so welcome. And it's always fascinating to me to learn about how people can, understand or relate to their sort of untapped potential of the human consciousness. And the use of channeling is used, all over, and a lot of people aren't necessarily sure about even what that means. But for you, let's just kind of dive in. When did you first know that you were a channeler, and what does that mean for you?
Well, actually, that's a great question. My concept of channeling has changed over the years, actually. I think that, like anything in life, we experience our reality based on often what we believe, and our context of understanding can dictate what that experience is. So I was 18 when I started channeling, and it wasn't something I planned. I don't think anyone really plans to be a channeler. It was a spontaneous event for me. It was a full, what some people would call a full trance channel. It lasted for about an hour, and that was it. And from that time, it really took me probably about 5 to 10 years to really integrate that fully into my experience, because it was a little bit disruptive. I think when things like that start to happen for you, it changes the way your brain works and the way your nervous system works and your whole trajectory in life, really. So for me, my concept when I first began channeling, I had a Catholic background, and I had been to quite a few metaphysical classes and meditation classes throughout my teens, because I could see things and feel things and hear things, much like you, and I wanted to understand that in a deeper context. So my understanding of channeling when it first started was, and that lined up with my experience, was that it was bringing a consciousness that was beyond me through me. So a greater wisdom, a higher vibration frequency, perhaps even a different soul or a different aspect of consciousness. And that's how I experienced it. So in the beginning, it was really quite a physical experience. And you would really feel that vibratory change, and I'd feel very expanded. I used to call myself the Marshmallow Man, like from Ghostbusters, because that's what it used to feel like. In fact, the first master that came through me, I used to jokingly call him Big Head, because that's what it felt like. Like I had a huge head. Of course, I realized later on that his name wasn't Big Head at all. It was Serapis. but my understanding with the wisdom that the masters have been bringing throughout the last 20-25 years has led me to a completely different understanding of what channeling is. And rather than see channeling as bringing something outside of you in, we now practice bringing what's deep within us out. And
Mm,
in this sense, it's more of a unified field of experience that all wisdom is available through us. The human body is a portal, and we have a divine right to access cosmic
mm,
wisdom. So I
yeah.
see it now as bringing out threads of consciousness. And I truly believe, and we do speak about this a lot and teach this in our seminars and workshops, that it's an aspect and a capacity that every human has, but we don't have an understanding of how to exercise that muscle. And oftentimes the greatest stumbling block is we don't believe that we have the right to.
Right. Our lack of deservedness, our feelings of disconnection can all affect that
Right.
consciousness and our belief systems around that. But there was something really profound about the way you described the change that you've experienced, because the trance channeling that occurs when a being, blends its consciousness through the medium, the person, is a bit like that, coming out. But what the description that you're saying about um, coming from within is so incredible, because if you think about our connected consciousness of outside interdimensional beings, that really does reinforce the concept of we are all one, we are all
Yes.
connected, and it's really no different than me channeling or really just connecting with another aspect of myself, which happens to be over there.
Right. Well, I love the way you say that, another aspect of yourself, because if we all are a part of that one divine unified field of awareness, then surely every stream of consciousness is a part of us. And, this is part of the capacity of our DNA that we don't fully understand yet as a
Mm,
species, that we have access to the totality of all experience, all timelines, all expressions of consciousness through our form. But it's our beliefs that we are separate to that, and we somehow have to attain that or have permission to access it or somehow journey towards it, that prevents us from accessing it right now in this moment. So anything's possible from
yeah.
within.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, yeah, there's so many other questions I want to ask you about that specific thing, but I want to talk about the wisdom of the masters as sort of, would you consider them to be a collective beings that communicate in one voice to you, or are there several of them?
Well, there are several of them. And again, as my experience changed over 25 years,
Mm,
so too did my experience of them, from individualized personas with very unique characteristics and voices. And when I'm in that state of awareness, my face changes, my voice changes, and it's very,
mm,
characteristic of particular
mm,
personalities.
mm,
And more they come through now as a group energy or a group presence. But I think,
mm,
again, that's really in line with and indicative of this belief of us moving into a unified field. So it
right.
becomes more seamless. And in fact, there are many times throughout the day where I can, you know, change gear. I like to call it
Mm,
changing gear, where you're not never really sure. And
mhm,
I have a lot of friends say this to me. We can feel the energy, we can feel the stream of wisdom changing almost mid-sentence now. And I
mm,
think this goes back to what you were talking about, with how it becomes such a unified experience for you.
mm.
It's consciousness speaking as you, through you, of you. And it can become difficult to tell after time. It becomes
Right.
you.
Yeah. So, what is so important to the masters about the information that they're bringing at this time? And I know, as you've described in your book, that this isn't particularly new to you. That you've been talking about this for over 2 decades, and right now the world is sort of opening up a little bit more. In the past, 5 years, I'd say we're actually seeing that shift actually happening. And I'm curious about what the masters would say about why it's so important that we bring this information out right now.
Well, it's something that we've been writing and speaking about, as you mentioned, for a long time. And I think that, you know, a lot of the material the masters have been bringing forward has been about understanding how it is that you're changing through this, and understanding that you're actually okay. And because things aren't working for you anymore, or you feel like you don't have a sense of purpose or mission as much anymore, it doesn't mean that you're going off the path. It means that you're going beyond the path, which is where we move from 3D to 5D. We go beyond that personal sense of progress towards our divinity, because if you already know that you're divine, you don't really need to go towards divinity. You begin to live from that place. So really, this year in particular, we're no longer in a sense of preparation and preparing ourselves and understanding. We're actually in that gap, in that void space now between the 3D and the 5D reality. And for a lot of people, it can be terribly alarming and disarming and confusing, because we're so used to, in our linear perspective, knowing what the next step is and knowing where to go and having a sense of direction. And even before this year, our sense of direction was moving towards the new earth reality, moving towards this. But a paradigm shift requires a void space. You know, the space between spaces.
Right.
So that reset can occur. But when that happens, it can be so disarming for people that they're not even sure if they're meant to be here or not anymore. And I think the reason this information is so important right now is because it's not preparation time, it's we're in it time. And it's difficult to see ahead, but you can't go back. So how do you operate from this space? And that's where we are right now. And the most important thing right now for humanity is to actually know that we still exist in this. Because there's a lot of question right now about, should we really still be here?
So what do you think that's about? Is it the fact that, you know, or maybe talking about the origin of human design and thinking, you know, I know there are a lot of theories and different discussions about our consciousness being sort of locked down when we were merged, you know, spiritually with the physical body many, many, many years ago. Well, of course, not yesterday. And, you know, wow, I've lost my train of thought there for a moment, but I guess my question is really about why do you think people have those challenges about facing that void, which would allow them, or maybe they might be getting back into old patterns of escaping or feeling fearful. Why do you think that is happening, where people aren't really embracing it or having a difficult time embracing that?
Well, actually, both your directions with that question there are one and the same, actually. So I wouldn't say you lost your train of thought. I would say you went where we were going to go, actually. That's how intuitive
Right
you are. So I mean, if we look at 300 to 330,000 years ago, that at that point within human experience, the original blueprint for humanity and the blueprint of experiences and the capacity for the human form and DNA was somewhat changed. It did change. And those changes were supported by changes in our external structures and mechanics of reality and how we operate here. So the greatest distinction and change there was the shift from humans as a creator species to humans as a reproduction species. And what I mean by that is that we shifted from having a particular form of DNA and a particular creative capacity, where our greatest gift to this world is our ability to continually create with detail and diversity. That's what humans are designed for, which doesn't just mean what we create on the planet. It also means the experiences that we create are completely diverse and full of detail all the time. And indeed, we see that in natural law all over our planet with all the different species of plants and animals. It's supposed to be like that. And that's what we were designed for, this within this Earth reality, which is why the Earth was always described as the galactic Garden of Eden, because so much creation was possible through the human species. And then over time, that capacity for creation was somewhat subdued through different vibratory practices. We could talk about how sound and water were used to change the DNA.
Mm.
And we became really a species that was very much focused and directed towards productivity and repetition. So yes, we have incredible attention to detail still, but we keep producing the same things over and over again. And
Mm.
our sense of success as people and as individuals is how well can we practice this? How well can we repeat this? How well can we perfect this? And that's not only in what we make and what we produce in this world, it's also our experiences. So then our DNA starts to replicate and reproduce patterns of experience, traumas, points of view, emotions, and that therein we get the karmic cycle.
Mm.
So that has been happening for around 330,000 years. And we are now moving back to our original capacity, which is why the DNA is unfolding and expanding again. The increased vibrational frequency on the planet allows that to occur. And so humanity again is going to become a creator species again, which means that we can no longer keep expressing and focusing and donating energy to all the external systems that are set up on the planet that are designed to get us to keep doing the same things over and over again.
Mm. Wow.
And so here we are in 2020, and
Right.
we've been incredibly disrupted because a lot of us have had to unhook from these external habitual systems of productivity or behavior or predictability. And a lot of us feel lost because all of a sudden, what is our purpose and what is our meaning if we can't produce in the same way? Or we can't keep doing things in the same way. And yet it's a beautiful opportunity to sink back into our sovereignty and actually start to create from that internal cosmic wisdom what's possible instead of what's probable. And that's the
really
big
great.
shift this year.
Right. And so it's about, jumping onto your infinite human potential, what is possible. And that
Right.
void space of not really knowing can be quite fearful, where we can now sort of, as you obviously do with connecting to another being, we have the capacity to learn more about our true nature and that creativity, which we're now sort of quote forced on us. But I think I'd love to hear a point on that. If we all cosmically agreed to it, or it wouldn't have happened, the forced pause of the coronavirus pandemic. But I want to go back to your discussion of, in your book, and obviously your work is a lot about what is the human potential, how can we tap into it, and what does it look like? Can you share a little bit about the forgotten inherent capacities of the human physical form?
Sure. I mean, our DNA originally was designed to be a completely different shape and geometry to what it is now. So it's becoming more spherical. And I do believe someone sent me an article the other day, actually, that scientists have just discovered a spherical form of human DNA, which I was very happy to see, because we've been speaking about that for a little while.
It's great when science catches up to what we've been talking about for centuries as seers, right?
That's right. That's right. So we've become very locked into third dimensional reality, which is in essence bringing our cosmic capacity into a very concentrated stream of direction. I liken it to, a fountain pen, and there's the ink, which is the cosmic flow coming through onto the parchment, which is our third dimensional fabric of reality. And we're the nib, and we require a little bit of compression and a bit of pressure
Right.
before that begins to flow, but it flows in a very specific direction, and it's like a laser focus for consciousness. So really, we're designed to be able to move a little bit beyond that. I mean, our reality has really concentrated our focus and our efforts in particular directions, instead of allowing us to be multi-directional, which means we can create many things at once. So in terms of our capacity, one of the major things really is our capacity with our human body, because we often try to transcend the body in terms of our spiritual awareness rather than actually using it. It's actually the most amazing tool that we have. And rather than seeing it as a container, to see it as a portal that allows us to bring more into this world, and also to move in and out of this reality. The body itself, in terms of its nervous system, the endocrine system, the vascular system, and the capacity of the skin, which science is not quite there with yet, but just starting to discover what the skin does. It allows us to be able to play with matter and mass and really become, again, the cosmic alchemists that we are, and to be in multiple locations at once, to be able to travel in different ways, to be able to experiment more with our reality. I mean, that's the true capacity of our form, and what we were really designed to be, alchemists for cosmic consciousness. I think we experience that sometimes. I was reflecting on this morning. I think we experience that in relationships sometimes. When you have a really, really beautiful, intimate experience with someone, it doesn't have to be a sexual or physical experience. It could be looking into somebody's eyes. Something happens and you can feel it, and you can feel that it's taken you beyond the limitation of capacity of where you are in that moment. And I think our relationships with each other remind us of what we're capable of in those moments, because we can't really describe what happens, but we transcend where we are. Humans are super important to this reality.
Right, or we wouldn't have chosen to be a part of it, I suppose.
Right.
Wow, there's so many different questions I want to follow up with that, but I'm curious, you talked about the skin as being so important, and it reminds me of the article that came out in the use of, I think it was Japan or China, of having articles of clothing be embedded with vitamins and nutrients, recognizing the skin absorbs the surroundings and the environment, and it didn't catch on. I didn't actually even meet the consensus reality. It sort of like was a small event, discussion, articles or two, but that was sort of one example of us seeing the really cool thing that the skin does. But what else can you share about that you've discovered?
Well, I think the whole foundation to understanding the real capacity of skin is this shift in understanding from seeing our physical bodies as a container or a vessel, and seeing it as a portal or a void space. I mean, we look to our bodies, and our third dimensional understanding, our limited 3D view, says that the skin basically contains everything. It contains our body. So there's all these cells and organs, there's all these mechanics going on, again, a very 3D view. But if we think of ourselves as cosmic beings or consciousness, then, and if you have a very expanded ability to see, anybody that can see energy fields and could see that when you look into the body, there's actually a whole lot of space in there. And I love the way the masters compare looking into the body to going into the void, going into the cosmos. The same as when you look into the sky, there's not too much difference. And so if we start to think of the body actually as an entrance and exit point into this dimensional reality, into this world, rather than a container, we start to see skin almost like the membrane of a cell, because there's not too much difference between the whole physical body and one cell. It's kind of very similar. It's a question of scale. Same with the planet, same with the galaxy, and so on.
Right.
So we start to look at skin as a membrane. And if you start to look at skin as a membrane, you start to see it as an interface between an inner world and an exterior world, or a cosmic reality and a 3D earth reality. And so everything is sensed and communicated between one version of reality and another through the skin. So the skin is incredibly intelligent. It can read information, it can transmit information. It has an ability to, if I simplify it the best way I can, to be almost like the interdimensional interface that allows us to be in several places at once. It's pretty important.
Yeah, and from an energy medicine perspective, in the human energy field, the association between the skin and the heart, the openness of the heart, love, and that I just, get the tingles just, obviously resonating
Right.
with that, even in my own body right now, which isn't a sign. But
That's right.
yeah. So I'd love to hear what would you like people to know about the agreement? Is that a contract, like a soul contract, or what is the agreement that you talk about in your book?
Well, I do feel that coming out of 3D and 4D and into 5D reality, we're coming to the end of contracts, actually, because contracts
Mm,
require commitment and consistency. And these are things that humans aren't originally designed for. So I would say that the agreement is a principle for life that is based on natural cosmic law, that is about how creation and the mechanics of creation actually work in actuality, rather than how we have learnt that creation works, which is a very distilled version. So the agreement is really a creation based on a principle of resonance. And I mean, quantum physics has started to be talking about this in the last 20 or 30 years as well, which is fantastic, where creation doesn't happen through expended effort or donation of energy or cause and effect, which is where we've been, but that creation happens through divine resonance or agreement, where however you are operating here, things begin to move into agreement with you. And this is indeed the principle for creation that the universe is based upon. But somehow we don't operate by that within our
right.
earth reality. We've come to believe, somewhat
Mm,
erroneously, that it requires a lot of energy to create anything. And it requires a lot of focus and diligence and
mm,
consistency and productivity. And in this way, we've very much become attached to the idea of almost an electrical circuit or a system of electricity for creation, which means that we build up a charge, we get motivated, we get focused, and then we donate energy towards something
mm.
external to us to get it moving. And then we wear ourselves out, and then we charge up again and we keep going. We know how it
Mm.
is.
Well, it's fascinating because it reminds me of, people that do healing work, and how people always ask me, don't you get tired
Exactly.
and I think, it relates to agreements around how we help other people and taking on other people's stuff versus being nourished by the energy that comes through us as facilitators of someone else's, process, whatever that might look like for them.
Agree. And people often say that to me, doesn't channeling make you tired? And I worked in clinic in energy medicine for many years as well. And don't you get drained? And when there was a belief that I was donating energy or directing energy towards something, then yes, there would be a recovery time that was required. Now I'm understanding about agreement and resonance. It's merely a matter of me sitting in my totality and knowing my own sense of divinity, and then whoever else is in vicinity or feels um, in alignment with that shows up in my sphere of reality, and they start vibrating at that same frequency. So I've managed to maintain my own sense of being, and now they are maintaining a sense of being, and it's all very simple, and it's all very divine. And it doesn't mean that we have to sacrifice anything of ourselves. We just become more, and we become an amplified version of ourselves because somebody else shows up in a very similar
Mm.
way.
And don't we all want that for ourselves? As we
All
know, it'll
right.
expand out to everyone that we touch and have a consciousness connection to. It's beautiful.
Well, that's collective consciousness. It's amplification, not donation. And I think that's what we sometimes forget.
Well, I think, yeah, being our third dimensional stubborn beings at times, I think it's part of why we chose the human experience, to be able to, you know, bang our head against the side of the door before realizing there's a handle right there and saying, oh goodness, look at that.
Right.
I'm curious
Right.
though, is there anything that you would like to share with folks who are listening or watching about the book that we haven't already talked about? I mean, there's so much here. Obviously, we've only
Oh,
touched the surface of of the iceberg, right? We're seeing just the snippet of information that we've been able to share about right now. But is there any strong message that you want folks to understand about why it's so important that they understand what you're talking about in the book?
sure. I mean, I think that, and indeed, when a lot of this information and material was being expressed, a lot of it can be really challenging because it's so not what we already understand and believe. And the reason I frame that in that way is because some of the content in this book challenges even what we think about belief. And when you're challenging what you think about belief and how belief is constructed, it can really disarm everything you think
Right,
that you know.
right.
So I think one of my favorite chapters in this book is about belief, and it's because we think we understand what belief is and how belief is important in terms of what we create. If we believe something, it is so. But what happens if we can create prior to belief, or what happens when we can
Mm,
create without belief? How does that completely blow the lid off what we're limited to experiencing and what's actually possible for our world? If we think about belief, we have a belief for something, and if we believe it enough, it can happen or it can manifest. But as we know in history, if something occurs in our reality that there is no belief for, how easily the mind dismisses it, or we try to
mm,
reference it to something we
yeah,
already believe, and we
recreate something
completely,
new.
of course, we completely miss the treasure of what that is. And I think that moving into a new earth reality, or really shifting this planet and the consciousness for humanity, we have to really understand that we can create things that we don't yet have beliefs for, and that part of the
Mm.
joy of discovery is discovering something and then having a belief for it. And I don't think we've experienced much of that so far.
Well, just thank you so much. It's such an honor and a privilege to have you on. I'd love to have you on again and dive deeper into one or more of the aspects of your incredible wisdom that comes through the masters. And I also want to thank and honor the masters for their presence in coming to share this with you. We know it's no accident either. And how can folks get more information about you, get your book, or learn about your workshops and events?
So I have a website. It's just my name, RebeccaDawson.net. You can actually download the first chapter of this book all about the body, and there's some interesting things about skin in there as well for
Mm.
free on there, just on the homepage. I have a YouTube channel. I do a lot of my content is free and widely available. So I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. There's a lot of transcripts and content available through the website on the Explore page, and I do workshops and seminars, and basically just make myself available for whatever emerges next.
That's beautiful. It's a great way to live. And I've often said that in my experience, it's just following spirit's guidance can be challenging, but when you say yes and you learn to accept, sometimes you'll make the shifts in your life that would seem so irrational to people, that you're just like, no, it's that trust,
Yeah,
trust. So
the
if
leap of
any of
faith.
yeah, it's a big one at times. But again, thank you so much. I love the agreement. For those of you watching or listening, I hope that you check it out. And thank you so much for joining me, Rebecca. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege.
Thank you, Travis. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all who've joined us wherever and whenever you're doing so, and hope to see you again real soon.